Today, we're going to be doing something pretty cool. We're going to turn this USB drive into almost an entirely new computer. We're going to be downloading something called Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a distribution of Linux. Distribution is kind of like a fancy word for flavor. And there are lots of different flavors of Linux, and I encourage you to go, learn about them and play with them, as you see fit. But Kali Linux is specifically designed for security professionals and comes preloaded with lots of different tools, capabilities, and settings that make conducting security assessments pretty easy and fun. It is a professional grade tool. I mean, we use it in our day-to-day work, almost every day. So you have to be careful with it because these are hacking tools. So we're going to be cautious with how we play around and not point them at anything we're not authorized to point them at. But at the same time, we're going to have a ton of fun with Kali Linux, learning how to conduct basic security assessments and getting hands-on with cybersecurity stuff. So through this lab, we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to download Kali Linux from an approved repository. We are going to do a technique to validate that we downloaded the code that we think we wanted to download and didn't accidentally download something malicious. We're going to be flashing this Kali Linux file that we download to a USB drive. And then we're going to be booting into that USB drive. And so when you boot into a USB drive, your computer pulls, the operating system and, the basic storage stuff from the USB drive, but keeps the processing power and memory and all the associated, computing stuff from your laptop. And so it's almost like having a whole new computer. And I think it's really, really cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is download Kali Linux from kali.org. Now, downloading open source security software can be a little bit dicey. Open source software, anybody can mess with it. They could, inject malicious code. You could be downloading something you think is legitimate and it turns out to be not. So we always want to be able to take a little bit more care when downloading open source software. And that's particularly true for Kali Linux because lots of different people mess around with Kali Linux, create lots of different flavors of Kali Linux, and some of those are malicious. So we want to be careful with how we do this download. So we're going to actually go to the kali.org website. We could just do something like this, like, Google Kali Linux, right? And kali.org is the first hit, and that's great. But if you scroll on down, you can see there's lots of different places to download Kali Linux. We don't necessarily know if those are legitimate, or maybe they have malicious code installed that could do all sorts of nasty things to your computer. So we want to make sure that we're going to kali.org. And so the easiest way to do that is obviously to navigate to www.kali.org manually. And if you're feeling extra cautious, we can kind of take a look at their certificate. And we're not going to, this is a beginner's course, so I don't, expect you to know everything that's going on with this certificate information. But it's always a good idea just to take a look and see if anything's out of whack. We know everybody's heard of GoDaddy, so we know that that's, a legitimate certificate authority. You can see that the common name's kali.org. Again, everything looks legit. So we can have a high degree of confidence, not perfect confidence, but a high degree of confidence that this is actually kali.org. And so to find Kali Linux, we're going to go to the download section and we're going to download Kali Linux. And so you can see lots of different options here. There's lots of different, flavors of Kali Linux that you can download. And we are going to pick the probably the 64-bit live. So this is we're on a Macintosh, and so if you have a Macintosh computer that was made after about 2007, I can pretty much guarantee you that you want the 64-bit version. There is a 32-bit version if you're running a particularly old computer, or if you have a specific type of Windows computer and you need that 32-bit version. But the 64-bit will likely work on a 32-bit version anyway. And so this is probably a pretty safe download. And so I want you to pay attention to a few things. So we are, downloading the live version, meaning that we can run it in our case on a USB drive. This is version 2020.4, and you see this little code over here. So this is called a hash, and a hash is pretty cool. It is a unique code that is generated from the software. And so if I were to download this Kali Linux and I were to modify the software in any way, it would change the hash. And so by comparing the hash from the modified Kali Linux to this original hash, I could see that it had been tampered with, and that's not a version I would want to use. And so let's say I were to click on this and start the download process, and let's say someone was able to hijack that download process and inject a different file in there. And so I think I'm downloading, from here, but someone's managed to hijack this. The hash file would be different if they had modified the software. And so this is a really, really slick way, and I'm going to show you how to check this in a bit. It's a really slick way to know that, to have confidence that this is the correct version of Kali Linux from the official repository. And so we're going to hop up here to downloads, and you can see this is a sizable file, so it's going to take a while. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording now and let this file finish downloading. I'm also going to point out that this is a .iso, and so a .iso is a special type of file. So once we download this, it's not the kind of file you're going to be able to click on and open and start playing with. There's some more steps we need to take to make this ISO file usable on our USB drive. We're going to actually have to use a technique to write that ISO from our desktop to our USB, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But don't be alarmed if you go ahead and try to click that .iso and it doesn't do anything, because that's not how an .iso file works. We need to do some manipulation with it to get it to do what we want to do. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording until this download finishes, and we'll pick up after it wraps up. So that took about 20 minutes to download on my admittedly extremely slow internet connection. And so we come up here, we see that that downloaded good. I'm going to put this on my desktop because it's some of the things we're going to do next are just easier when that file's on the desktop. So the next thing we need to do is we need to take a look at the checksum. And so, I'd called this a hash earlier, and it is. It's, the technical purists, though, will complain that it is technically a checksum, which is a type of hash. And like I said, this will help us see, if this is software that we downloaded is the actual approved software, and that it wasn't tampered with, mid-install. Because if anyone tampered with that software, it would modify this number, and this number would come out different. And so I'm going to, show you now how to check that checksum. So we're going to hop up here to terminal. All right, now terminal is open, and this is really easy. It is just one simple command, and that is sha sum space -a 256, and then we're going to do something, a little shortcut that's actually pretty cool. You're going to be doing this a lot in this course, so I want you to watch and see how this works. So we are going to drag and drop this file into the terminal window. And what that does is it populates the whole file path for you. And so this is a lot easier than trying to figure out what the file path is, so that the computer can find the file and then typing it in manually or copying and pasting. It's just really easy to drag and drop the file into the terminal window to populate that file path. And you're going to be doing this a lot through this course because we're going to be working with a lot of files in command line, and that's just the easiest way to populate that file path. All right, and then we hit return, and it kind of does its thing. It takes a little bit. It's not instantaneous. But again, so this is another thing that's interesting about working with command line. So a lot of times it will look like your computer is doing nothing, that it's just sitting there. And in actuality, a lot is going on behind the scenes. And we're going to know when this is done when the command prompt cursor pops back up, showing that we are ready to go. And so that's how we know that this worked. And so you see that we pulled the hash file, we pulled the checksum, and we can go and we can check that checksum against what it's supposed to be. So you can see here, this is the live version that we downloaded, and you can see that it is just eyeball test. It is the same. So we can see that, this is the file that we expected to download. It is the legitimate file. It was not interfered with in any way on the way to us. And we have the right file, a safe file to work with. Because again, if somebody had modified this software, this number here would be different than what is the approved checksum value. All right, so with that done, now that we know that we have the right file, I want to go show you what happens when you click on this file. So if you try to open this file, it will launch this, it'll open this, but there's nothing you can really do with this file here. So a lot of students, when they download Kali, like they think that it's like a normal file, and they want to just hop up and start opening and clicking around, and there's nothing you can do in this current state with the information that's here. So actually we're going to go ahead and eject that. So but yeah, this is an ISO, and so we need to take this ISO file and make it into something we can actually work with. And so to do that, we are going to end up writing, it's called flashing, this ISO to this USB drive that's right here. So it's now time to flash our ISO file to our USB drive. And so to do this, first, we're going to keep our USB drive unplugged for the time being, and we're going to go up to Spotlight Search, and we're going to relaunch Terminal. All right, so we've got Terminal window open, and just like in the last lab, we're going to write disk util list. And you can see I have my -dev -disk 0 and my -dev -disk 1 showing up in the terminal window. And so now that we see those two, we can go ahead and plug in our USB drive. And we're going to run disk util list again. And so I still have disk 0 and disk 1, but now I also have /dev /disk 3. And so we know that, just like with the previous lab, that disk 3 is my USB drive. And yours is probably going to look different than this. Yours might be /dev /disk 2, or maybe disk 7 or disk 9. It could be any number of numbers based on how many disks you have plugged in right now. But the key here is to make sure that you know which USB drive or which disk is your USB drive. And if you have any doubts at all, make sure to get in touch with me, because the next series of commands that we're going to run are going to obliterate the USB drive. So we have to be really careful about aiming these commands at the correct disk. All right, so the first command we need to run is disk util unmount capital D disk with a capital D. So UNMOUNT capital D, that's important, for ISK. And then we're going to do /dev /disk 3. All right, so now we've unmounted the USB drive. And so the next command we're going to run is sudo. And sudo is a magic word that essentially gives you sort of instantaneous root privileges to do really advanced things, low level, high impact things on your computer. And so we're going to be using that command a lot. So we're going to do sudo dd if equals, and then we're going to drag and drop this file just like I showed you before. And then we say of equals /dev /r disk 3, and that's so it's the /dev /disk 3 just with an R in front of the disk 3, and we're going to say bs equals 4m. All right, and then we're going to hit return, and it's asking us for a password because we're running sudo. So I'm trying to do something in root, and so it wants my system password. So let me go ahead and type that in. And so as I type the password, you'll see nothing shows up. But I am still typing the password. It's not like a normal username and password login, which will show little blank characters as you type in your password. But type in your password. This is probably the password you use to log into the system, and you may not be prompted depending on how your system's set up. All right, and so this is working, and this is going to take a long time. This is, could take half hour, could take 30 minutes. I do know that it is working because I have a USB drive that sort of flashes when it's doing things, and I can see it flashing. But otherwise, there's going to be no indicator that this is doing anything. And that's okay. That's perfectly normal. Just like when we run other commands, we'll know that this is done when the command prompt with the little cursor to type in a new command pops up. And so, we're going to pause the recording here and wait for this to do its thing, and then we'll pick back up once we have that ISO flashed appropriately. So, all right, so that actually went pretty fast. You can see from here that it only took about 9 minutes. to run, which actually it's kind of record time. Usually it takes me closer to a half hour. And you'll know that process is done when you see the command prompt pop back up. You also might see something like this, the records in and records out indicator there. And so now that we have flashed this ISO to our USB, we can now actually boot into this USB. And so if you're on a Mac after that's older than, say, 2018, you may have something called a T2 security chip in your Mac, in which case you're going to have to disable certain features of that chip in order to be able to do this. That's fine. It's not going to hurt your computer. It's something that we can, restore back when we're done with Kali Linux. But you are going to have to go ahead and disable certain features in T2. If you see the written instructions that accompany this tutorial, you'll see a tutorial on how to do that. I have a really old Mac here. This is a 2012, and so unfortunately I can't screen share for you and show you how to do that, but I can walk you through those directions if you have trouble following them in the written instructions. But if you don't have a 2018 or later Mac, this process is actually really pretty easy. Much easier than trying to do it on a Windows machine. So as if you watch the Windows video, you'll see. And so what we're going to do is we're going to reboot our computer. And obviously I can't screen share that since I'm going to be rebooting the computer, but you reboot the computer and you hold down the Option key. And the Option key looks like this on a Mac. It's on the lower left-hand side, and it looks like this. All right, and so as the computer reboots, you're going to hold down that key, and you're going to hold it down the entire time the computer reboots. And as you do that, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. Now, on this screen, you need to figure out which one is your USB drive. Your screen could look differently or different than what is shown here because I don't know how your computer is configured or what you have plugged into. In my example, it's the one on the far right is my USB drive, and so I'm going to arrow over that and I'm going to hit enter. And then you will eventually see some activity and you will see a screen that looks like this. And on this screen, we're just going to go ahead in this instance and hit enter, and we're going to launch the live USB version. We're only on this screen. You can see a lot of different options, but we're actually only going to be ever using two of these options in this class. We're going to be using that top one that's live USB, and then we're going to, if you scroll down, you can see one that has persistence, not encrypted persistence, but just the persistence one above that. We're going to be using that one a lot too. But those are the only two we're going to use. So if we say just to boot into live, we want that top one. If we're saying boot into persistence, we're talking about that lower one that just says persistence there. So in this instance, let's just go ahead and hit live, and you should see this. And we just booted in to Kali Linux off the USB drive plugged into your computer. And I gotta tell you, no matter how many times I do this, this never gets old for me. I think it's really cool that we can load an operating system onto a USB drive and boot into that USB drive, essentially turning your computer into a whole new device. And I think that's really neat. So we got the hard drive and some basic storage on the USB, and we're pulling the processor, memory, and all the associated computing hardware stuff from your original computer. And I just think it's the neatest thing. And so now that we're in Kali Linux, there's a few things I just want to point out. So first of all, there are a whole lot of really powerful tools loaded on Kali Linux. So if you go up over to the top left corner, this little Kali Dragon icon up at the top, and you click down, you can see all the different tools and attacks that you have access to. And don't go playing with these willy-nilly. I mean, feel free to explore, but be very careful about pointing these tools at anything that you're not authorized to point them at, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. I mean, this is a full-fledged hacking suite of tools, and you can do a lot of damage. You can get a lot of trouble. So be cautious, but at the same time, feel free to play around and explore. Just be an adult about it. Some other things to point out, we have a web browser down here. It is, it's going to look just like Firefox, so it's going to be something you're really used to using. You have your access to terminal right here. You can also find that up in the, top bar left. There's a little black window for terminal. And we're going to be using this text editor a lot. So there's a basic text editor. It works the same way as any text editor does on your usual machine. It's no different. You can save, yada yada, do all your stuff. Some other things to point out. So some hardware doesn't always play nice with Kali Linux. So like, make sure your trackpad works. Make sure, pop open the text editor and just, test to make sure that your keyboard works. And the other big one is that sometimes wireless cards don't work. So up in the, again, top bar, this time on the right side, you'll see something that looks like a computer screen with a little X in the bottom right. This is your network connection. And so, you can click on this and you can find your Wi-Fi network, and, mine appears to have disappeared. So I can't get on it for you, but oh, there it is. There's one of them. So we will use this guy. Type in a password. And then there you go. So you can see again up that little computer screen with the X is turned into, a little wireless indicator, and I am online. And so make sure that works for you. Sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, let me know and we can try to troubleshoot it. Alternatively, it almost always works if you just plug in direct, unplug your Ethernet cable from your wireless modem and plug it directly into your computer. That almost always works. And I think the last thing one more other thing before we go to the last thing. So up in the, again, top bar on the left side, you'll see a little like computer screen with it looks like a red bubble in the lower right. I think that's supposed to be a camera. This is Kazam, and it is a great screencast, screenshot recording tool. So, you can take screencasts, which is actually what I'm doing right now. You can do screenshots. When I ask for screenshots for labs, like this is probably the best way to do it. Again, it's really easy way, tool to work with. So again, feel free to play around. Just be careful with the tools. And when you're ready to shut down, you scroll over here to terminal, and you do sudo reboot. That'll restart your computer, and your computer will just restart normally. Or you can do sudo power off, and that'll just shut down your device entirely. But I won't do that now because I don't want to lose the screen share. But for now, have fun, and we're going to be getting to know Kali Linux a lot throughout this course. So have fun and just be safe.
This tutorial was prepared by the Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection at Cleveland Marshall College of Law, Cleveland State University.